We have just witnessed an extraordinary 24 hours in the House of Representatives. As the U.S. government seemed on the brink of a lengthy government shutdown, Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy made a decision to move forward with a bill that many of his fellow Republicans opposed. The bill, which required a two-thirds supermajority, passed. But take a look at the final tally. Only 126 Republicans voted yes, 90 voted no. It only passed because it had the overwhelming support of House Democrats. President Biden has now signed the bill into law, but remember, this is just a temporary measure, keeping the government open for 45 days with no risk whatsoever for a long-term deal. McCarthy avoided a drawn-out shutdown for now by ditching almost everything that he had promised conservatives and getting a lifeline from Democrats. Now there's a real question of whether that move will cause hardline Republicans to try to remove him as Speaker of the House. ABC's senior congressional correspondent Rachel Scott has been on Capitol Hill all week, tracking it all. Good morning, Rachel.
John, good morning. President Biden signed that bill with just 45 minutes to spare. It was a week of uncertainty and chaos that ended with Democrats and Republicans finally coming together on a short-term deal to keep the government funded. This was far from what Speaker Kevin McCarthy wanted. He said he exhausted every single option trying to get the far right wing of his party on the same page, even trying to tie border funding to this fight. In the end, it was never enough. With time running out, he turned to Democrats. He put this measure on the floor that would keep the government funded until November 17th and add $16 billion in disaster aid. In the House, more Democrats voted for that bill than Republicans. It passed the Senate with sweeping bipartisan support. Neither side got everything they wanted here. No border security for Republicans, no Ukraine aid for Democrats, and most notably, no long-term solution, which means we could be right back here having this fight all over again in about 45 days, John.
So Rachel, bottom line, does this put McCarthy's job as Speaker in peril?
John, it sure seems that way. Those hardline conservatives were very clear from the beginning of this that if McCarthy tried to work with Democrats on a deal, they would try to oust him as Speaker. McCarthy responding to those threats, saying, bring it on.
All right, Rachel Scott on Capitol Hill, thank you. Joining us now is Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz of Florida, who has been Speaker Kevin McCarthy's chief antagonist in all of this. So I want to start right with what you've been saying all along. That you would move to oust him as Speaker, and what McCarthy said just yesterday. Take a listen.
Let's join together to do what is right. If somebody wants to make a motion against me, bring it. There has to be an adult in the room.
So, are you going to do it? Or are you going to move to oust him?
Kevin McCarthy's going to get his wish. I don't think the adult in the room would allow America to sit atop a $33 trillion debt facing $2.2 trillion annual deficits. I don't think the adult in the room would allow $8 trillion of this debt to come into refinancing at a higher level without serious spending cuts. And I don't think the adult in the room would lie to House conservatives. And that is exactly what Kevin McCarthy did. In January, to get the speakership, Kevin had to agree to certain guardrails on spending, and he had to agree to a process that would allow us to put some downward pressure on spending. Since the mid-90s, this country has been governed by revolving continuing resolution and omnibus spending bill. And what that means is that America's lawmakers take one up or down vote on the funding of the entire government. That is crazy. That is the reason we're $33 trillion in debt. We want to move to single subject spending bills. So he made that commitment. He broke it. And if at this time next week Kevin McCarthy is still Speaker of the House, it will be because the Democrats bailed him out, and he can be their Speaker, not mine.
So when do you make this move?
You'll be seeing it this week.
This week, okay.
That's why I came on the show this week.
Now, look, it takes only one person, obviously, you, to call for a vote to remove him, so-called motion to vacate. But you would need a majority to remove him, which means you're going to need Democrats to remove him. Do you really think that Democrats are going to vote to remove Kevin McCarthy because he made a deal with Democrats?
No. I actually think Democrats are going to bail out Kevin McCarthy. So this is an exercise to show the American people who really governs you and how that governing occurs. So I'm on a mission to change it, where we're evaluating these bills independently. Kevin McCarthy is off making a secret deal on Ukraine as he's baiting Republicans to vote for a continuing resolution that doesn't include Ukraine. So the one thing Democrats, Republicans, the White House that we all have in common is that Kevin McCarthy at one point or another has lied to all of us. But if they want to keep him, then he belongs to them.
So you're not accomplishing anything here. I mean,
that's not true.
Well, you don't have the votes to remove him. So.
Well, by the way, I don't know until we have him. And by the way, I might not have him the first time, but I might have him before the 15th ballot. That's the number of ballots Kevin McCarthy needs.
So are you going to do this every day like you had suggested? Or are you going to like go through this process of voting over and over and over again?
I am relentless, and I will continue to pursue this objective. And if all the American people see is that it is a uniparty that governs them, and that it is always the Biden, McCarthy, Jeffries government that makes dispositive decisions on spending, then I am seeding the fields of future primary contests to get better Republicans in Washington who will actually tackle these deficits and debts.
I mean, if you somehow succeed after multiple tries, I mean, who would be the speaker?
Well, we have a lot of talented people in our conference. Obviously, it's an awkward discussion while our number 2, Steve Scalise, is in treatment for blood cancer. So I'm not going to pass somebody over because they're getting a medical treatment. I want to see how Steve Scalise comes out of that. We lost. A defeat is not a surrender. There were 90 Republicans who voted against this bad deal, and we did not prevail because here's what I've observed in the 118th Congress. On matters of frivolity or messaging bills, Kevin McCarthy is fine partnering with House conservatives. But whenever it comes to the money, right, the debt limit, the budget process, Kevin McCarthy's true coalition partner is Hakeem Jeffries.
But I want to, you face some criticism from fellow conservatives on this, who say that you are the one that basically kneecapped McCarthy because he tried to do a bill that included changes in border policy. He tried to do a bill that would have cut some spending. This is what Eric Erickson said after the bill passed. Conservatives got the whole of the House GOP to agree to cut the government by 8% as their opening negotiation with the Senate. But Matt Gaetz decided his grudge against Speaker McCarthy was more important, so he helped scuttle cuts, and now the government is going to grow. They're saying this is your fault.
The cuts were illusory. That was a mirage. The Biden administration had already put out a statement of administration policy that they were going to veto that. The Senate had already said they weren't going to take it up. So this is about what turf we battle on to reduce spending. I do not believe that we will ever reduce spending if the manner of negotiation is just what is the condition or the ornament that we're going to hang on to a continuing resolution. Since the mid-90s, this government has been ruled by continuing resolution or omnibus bill. That's why we're $33 trillion in debt. My plan to go into single subject spending bills would actually allow us to put that downward pressure. And I acknowledge that in divided government, you have to work with Senate Democrats. You have to work with the White House. But I don't think you should work with them on a continuing resolution or an omnibus bill. You should make those Senate Democrats have to take up our defense bill to give troops a raise, take up our Homeland Security bill to make changes at the border, take up our veterans bill. And if they did those things, people would have to vote on specific programs rather than just saying, oh, well, you know, I voted for the government funding bill, and sure, there's some stuff at the Department of Education I don't like, but I had to be there for the veterans.
So I know you say this is not personal with Kevin McCarthy, but it sure sounds personal.
You're talking about substantive de-dollarization.
But let me ask you about the relationship. Globally. When was the last time you talked to him one-on-one? I mean, have you had a...
Well, matter of fact, just a couple weeks ago, Kevin McCarthy appointed me to the National Defense Conference Committee on the NDAA, and we spoke about some of our aligned defense priorities. So this isn't personal. Some people make policy disagreements personal because their own policy failures are so personally embarrassing to them. I hold no personal animus to with any of my Republican colleagues. By the way, including my Republican colleague you're about to have on next, who's had some pretty terse words for me. But at the end of the day, this is about spending. This is about the deal Kevin made in January. I do resent the fact that Kevin is like owned by lobbyists and special interests.
That's personal, by the way.
No, it's not personal. It's
substantive. An attack on the guy's integrity.
Well, it is an attack on the system that he has used to obtain the speakership. I am fighting for a different system, one based on spending guardrails, agreements on process. Kevin promised us 72 hours to read the bill. We didn't have it. He promised us $100 million wouldn't go onto the suspension agenda without the opportunity for amendments. Broke that deal too, and he promised us we'd return to pre-COVID spending levels. There is almost no promise he hasn't violated.
All right, Matt Gaetz, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you.